Hold on a second. I got something on my beard. My beard. My beard. My beard. Ah, yeah. My beard. My little grits. I don't really like talking about bad stuff. Honestly, it's not something that I really enjoy pursuing or even dialoguing on or critiquing. But to be honest, one of the things that has just happened recently in the world of US soccer kind of just needs to be addressed, and that is financial risk. You see, Major League Soccer is a weird league in the world of professional football, professional soccer. It was created with the intention of trying to be as low risk as possible, I guess you could say. And that was intentionally done in order to basically bring in top down investors who could build the soccer specific infrastructure that was needed in order to develop a professional league in the United States. Now, we can argue, and there are plenty that argue over the question of whether or not we should take off the training wheels or whether those training wheels were ever good to exist in the first place. I'm of the camp that, yeah, they should have been there. And I honestly don't think that they are ready to take the training wheels off. The more and more I research into what MLS does, they're they're still on very fragile ground, and I don't really think that's possible. I also feel the same way about USL, and I'm not really crazy about the pro rel push that they're trying to do, because that's just gonna make it a lot tougher for teams to be sustainable, especially when there's no revenue sharing whatsoever, which USL does not do. Not to mention, there's a bunch of other issues that USL has to get their house in order with before they even consider doing Division One or Pro Rel, whatever they need to do. They need to get their house in order. But anyway, that's enough about that. But like, the major thing concerning financial risk is that when you put a lot of money into investing into a certain player, you really have to make a decision on whether or not they were worth the money that you put in and what are the results that you're expecting, you know? And one of the things that MLS has kind of done as a way to kind of hinder the potential financial downfall that could come with a massive transfer investment specifically is that they've put the transfer payments into the salary cap, at least in some way, shape, or form. I'm not entirely sure how it all works. It's really confusing, just like general allocation money and whatever the hell that is. But recently, we've kind of just witnessed one of the reasons why MLS has been super, super particular about the transfer market and why they do what they do. And that really comes down to the name of one player, Emmanuel Latte Lath. He's an Ivorian player, and he was transferred in from Middlesbrough, where he had two really good seasons in the championship. Like, this was very impressive. In fact, let me get his stats up. So one of the things that you'll notice is his time in the championship was actually really good. Like, he had 2 years there and played 59 games and brought in 16 plus 11, 27 goals. That's impressive. In 2 years, bringing in 27 goals, almost 30 goals in 2 years. That's really impressive. Those are good enough numbers to be really good in MLS, or so you think, because if we are to do like league comparison, I would say the championship is probably on par with the top teams in MLS. I would say that while, your more traditional powerhouses, the ones that get the parachute payments and exploit the market that way, they're in their own little system. They can more or less beat any MLS team. I actually do believe that. And they probably could But I do believe like an Inter Miami or such could probably make it into the Premier League for a year. I'm not really sure that that's the case as of right now. Probably was the case maybe a year ago, but or even 2 years ago, actually, now that I think about it, when they won the Shield. But when it comes down to it, like, usually if you were to find a decent comparison to MLS teams, like maybe mid-tier, maybe even high-end MLS teams, they are more than likely going to be championship caliber of some way, shape, or form. So there's kind of like seen as a somewhat of a lateral transition between the two groups. Now your lower end MLS teams are probably going to be more on par with League One, and then the further down the quote unquote soccer system you go with like USL Championship, USL League One, those are going to be more lower end like League Two teams. Like with the US Championship, they're going to be more USL Championship is going to be more League Two, maybe National League caliber, and then you got League One, which is probably going to be closer to like National League North and South. So you kind of have this very stern you don't really have a very even platform when it comes to soccer in America. And so, but anyway, long story short, this was supposed to be somewhat of a lateral move for Latte Lath because he has been putting up really strong numbers, and Atlanta wants to be a dynasty team, and they want to build an elite program. Arthur Blank, who owns Atlanta United, also owns the Atlanta Falcons. And one thing that is very clear about this man is that he loves sports. I don't like, if there are certain owners, billionaire owners, that people could respectfully admire for their love for sports, there's probably only a few that you could actually look at and say, yeah, they would be somebody you could look up to in that manner. Probably not in much else, but at least in that manner. I'd say the other one that you could probably look up to in respect for soccer and in sports in general was probably Lamar Hunt. And I'm not saying he was a perfect guy either. I'm just saying that when it came to the world of soccer, the guy you could respect. Now, the thing is with Emmanuel Latte Lath, like, his start wasn't that bad. Like, he came in, if I'm looking here correctly, he came in scoring like 2 or 3 goals in his like first 5 games. Yeah, he netted, oh, here it is. He netted 5 goals in his first 6 games for Atlanta. But since he had just, in the next 39 appearances, he had only managed 3 goals and 3 assists. So here was a guy who came in hot and then ended up floundering. Where 2025, their season just was a absolute collapse. And it wasn't that great of a season either for Atlanta. Just nothing was clicking, nothing was working. And now with this year, it is an absolute trash fire. The best way I could sum it up is that Atlanta is looking like they are going to win the Spoon this year. As much as I would love to see Seattle go for that run in order to get a bingo. I got another video that talks about that. But this is just one of those situations where if you are putting a bunch of money into somebody, and $22 million might not sound like a lot of money in the world of soccer, because we hear about these $100 million transfers. I mean, we think of the likes of, you know, the Ronaldos of the world, or even like just how much money these players can make, these clubs can get for players. Yeah, it's a lot of money. It doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it really is. And Atlanta paid a record-breaking incoming transfer at the time with a $22 million fee, which is ridiculous. I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't think Beckham was paid for in a transfer fee. I don't think. Nor do I think Gareth Bale was either. Zlatan, I have no idea. I actually not very familiar with the transfer work that got Zlatan to the Galaxy, but I know that, but it says here that Sun was the only player who had a more expensive transaction, and you know, this is one of those signs of, this is just one of those moments where you got to remember that this is always a gamble. Now, look, Arthur Blank can probably count this as a loss in some way, shape, or form and still keep spending. I mean, lo and behold, the last 3 years, he spent, from what I can see here, 13 mil on Alexei Miranchuk. He spent 3.5 million on Bartosz Szliz from Legia Warsaw, I believe that's what it is. And then Gregerson from Bordeaux, 2 million on him, and then you get 2025 where you get 10 million for Miguel Almiron from Newcastle United, and then the 22 million deal on Latte Lath from Middlesbrough, and then Alzate from Hull City for 2.5 mil, and then even this year with Tomas Jacob from I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not going to try. Nakaha, I believe. Whatever. Nakaha. But anyway, 5 million for Jacob, and then Elias Bays from San Lorenzo for 3 mil. That's 8. That's 10, 20, 32, 45, 49, 51 million. $51 million spent in 3 years in order to basically win the wooden spoon. Just think about that. What would you do with $51 million? I guarantee you wouldn't be spending it on Miguel Almiron. And you probably wouldn't have bought Emmanuel Latte Lath if you knew what was going on, but you probably might have if you decided, hey, you know what, this guy actually could be really good. And when it comes down to it, like, just the amount of money that you would have to spend in order to make that money back, especially in MLS, where you are reliant on ticket sales, you are reliant on sponsorship deals, you need the broadcast money, but the broadcast money isn't coming in like it is in the NFL or even with the Premier League. Honestly, and also I think if I remember correctly, I think there's a percentage of the broadcast money that's actually going towards the youth academy system that MLS has. So even with all of this extra money that could help at least keep you sustainable, you are in deep reliance of the blank checks. And sooner or later, that money's going to dry up. Because sooner or later, it's going to be a situation where you're going to have to say, we spent so much money in the last 3 years on 6 players, and this is the result. We have a last place finish. We are the worst team in Major League Soccer, and all that it's shown is that even Arthur Blank cannot pay his way to win a championship. Even in soccer, he can't do it. Can't do it with the Falcons, cannot do it with United. But how much of now here's the real question that I got to ask about this, because I don't know if this is necessarily Latte Lath's fault, because if anything, he started off really strong, but something changed tactically to where he wasn't able to get himself going. Like something changed. I don't think he was more, I don't know if he was I don't believe he was necessarily under more pressure. And I don't necessarily know if it's just poor tactics. It could be that. I mean, if you were to go to like MLS Reddit and take a look there, I'm pretty sure some Atlanta fans will tell you that it was due to something involving tactics, like maybe they're not using him the right way. I don't know. But in situations like this, you can tell that the guy does have talent, but the team is just, they're just shooting themselves in the foot. They don't know what to do, and they don't know how to actually play on the field. And so I feel like even if they had like somebody like Leo Messi or even Ronaldo in Atlanta, they would still be contending for the spoon. I know, hot take, but I think I'm pretty accurate with that because even Ronaldo could not save Atlanta United. I just don't see it happening. Now, the thing is with this deal where he's going to be playing in Germany for Union Berlin, he's got a very unique deal where oddly enough, Union is going to be paying 100% of his salary, which, according to MLS rules, will free up the designated player slot that Latte Lath was covering with his contract. And so there have been talks and potential rumors about getting somebody new. And right now, the name that is currently coming into the thought process, or at least has been linked, is Romelu Lukaku from Belgium, who last I saw, he was telling the Americans in Seattle, doing this and being a part of the team that absolutely embarrassed the United States in the World Cup. So he would be a perfect signing. I wouldn't be surprised if they pick him up. I mean, guy's got nothing much else to do right now. He could totally make some waves in Atlanta. I'm pretty sure Atlanta would love him. He probably would help them at least get out of the spoon race. I'm not seeing much else there. But aside from that, I do want to say I do wish Latte Lath the best. Obviously, he doesn't need my support. And especially as a Nashville fan myself, I'm kind of glad he's out of there because obviously wasting talent like that is just something that you shouldn't be doing, especially if you're coming from a rival. If you're hearing a rival tell you that, something is up. And best of luck in the future then for Atlanta. I mean, it's actually, I don't wish for the best of luck, but whatever. The overall though, far too often we love to think that, and there is a somewhat of a correlation between how much money is spent on a player and how many championships you win. But the problem is, sometimes moments like these happen. By all means, Atlanta should be leading the East right now. If they've, just by how much money they've spent. But that doesn't really tell us anything. All that it told us was that they spent a lot of money and they flopped. It's not on the scale of 28-3, but it is pretty bad. Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about. See ya.